Hi everyone, Isabella here. So today is just a quick one. I wanted to ask you a question. So when you're growing up, you learn from those around you, and you learn mainly through story. Now, you may have had your parents telling you stories at bedtime, or your teachers telling you stories during the day. You may have had your grandparents telling you stories before you started school. But our lives consist of stories, and we also tell ourselves stories in our heads. Sometimes they're manufactured, sometimes they're real. But whatever stories we have inside our heads form our reality. Now, one of the things that we're all scared of doing is public speaking. And I want to ask you a question. Why are you scared of public speaking? Is it because you're worried about not being perfect? Are you worried about getting it wrong? Are you worried about being judged? Are you worried about what people may say to you or think of you? Whatever stories you're telling yourself in your head, they're just not true. So I have a solution for you. Now, when you go to speak to somebody in public, I want you to think about the stories that you were told as a child. What made those stories great? Was it the cliffhanger? Was it the superhero? Was it just not knowing? What was it? So, how did your parents, your grandparents, your teachers start off the story? Was it with Once Upon a Time? Because I'm guessing it would have been. But as an adult, if you say Once Upon a Time in a speech to start a speech off, people are going to think you're a raving lunatic. Or if you go to a dinner or a dance and you see a group of people and you enter the conversation and they're talking about, I don't know, the war, whichever war it might be, and you came up with Once Upon a Time, they'd probably have you committed, or they just wouldn't entertain you. They'd think you're a raving lunatic. But what happens if you actually started the conversation with, you know what? I remember a time when I spoke to, or I encountered this, or I experienced this. I am sure that most people would entertain you and your story, because stories are what humans evolve around. You know, before writing, before stories, well, there were no stories before stories. Everything's a story. So before we had official writing and official pictures, they used to paint on cave walls. And before that, I'm sure they did other spectacular things. But humans evolve around storytelling because we need it. It's part of who we are. So whenever you go into a speech that you need to give, or a meeting you need to attend, or a one-to-one with somebody, think about the story aspect and think about the person that you're speaking to. Don't just go in with what you want to say. Go in with what they need to hear. Because if you think about what they need to hear and you put it in a story format, what you need to say can come out in the conclusion, in the final paragraph. And 9 times out of 10, people understand and they adapt to your scenario. But if you go all guns blazing, 10 times out of 10, they're going to be turned off by it. So today, I just wanted to recap on storytelling as your main source of inspiration for talks, for meetings, for public speaking, whatever it might be. You're scared of being judged by. So I hope that you've taken something from this today, and I hope that it's useful. And until the next time, I'm Isabella, and thank you for popping by.